Some years ago, I wrote a blog article on not being a duck. What does that have to do with autism? You'll find out in a minute. In today's installment of this How to Explain Autism series, I'm going to share a bunch of weird autism analogies you've probably never heard of. They're a bit left of center and maybe not for everyone, but I like them and I'll be really curious to hear what you think and if they make sense to you. Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. Okay, so what does not being a duck have to do with autism? Well, the first autism analogy is exactly that, not being a duck. It's not a metaphor, think actual ducks sitting on a lake. I told you these were a bit weird, but bear with me. So the article that I wrote was essentially recounting the story of a human who wanted to be a duck, but was in fact not a duck. How difficult would it be to fit in? Humans and ducks are built completely differently. They all hang out together, but when I get in the water and try and join them, they all fly away. What's wrong with me? Why don't they like me? I'll link the blog article if you want to read the whole thing on this one. But I guess in a sense, this is almost like a version of the ugly duckling fable. Autism often feels like getting picked on for being different. That's how ostracism plays out. If you're perceived as different, you get bullied, picked last, or even not invited at all. I'm actually quite good at sports, and yet still I was always picked last for teams in primary school. The other side of the ugly duckling analogy is what it feels like to find your tribe. Discovering you're a swan and you weren't a duck in the first place, and more importantly, discovering that there are other swans out there who can relate to your experience, that is nothing short of life-changing, which is how a lot of late identified adults feel connecting with others in the autistic community for the first time. A good example of this is a UNICEF video that was made nearly 10 years ago now, but I think you can still find it on YouTube. They did a social experiment. Would you stop and help a 6-year-old girl if you saw her standing alone in the street? The answer is, it depends how well dressed she is. Same girl, nice clothes, gets help. Same girl, dirty clothes, looks homeless, does not get help. How others perceive us affects how others treat us, and that makes a huge difference. Anyway, let's move on. We've got a lot to get through, so I'll try and be a bit quicker. The next autism analogy is of a busy CEO. Back when I was working as an engineer, I was once tasked with this urgent project. I was working directly with the chief engineer of the whole company, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "When you're finished with this, come find me immediately and tell me directly." And here's the important part. Do not send me an email. I get hundreds of emails a day. I will not see it. Do not send me an email. And years later, I'm thinking, wow, that is actually a really good analogy. I feel like that all the time. I'm overloaded with information. Do not send me more information. If you're going to interrupt me, it had better be important. I'm going to mute the group chat. I'm going to go offline for a week or a month. I'm going to not respond to your text message. I'm so busy that I can only prioritize what's most important. And so I'm imagining a 9-year-old on an iPad. You're trying to get their attention and they're like, "Yes, hello, can I help you? Can you not see I'm busy playing Minecraft here? What do you want? Oh, you just want to chat. Thanks, but no, I'm going to go back and do my work now." Okay, let's move on. The next one is a little bit dated in terms of technology, but I think most of you will still be able to get it. The next autism analogy is of driving a car with a manual transmission when everyone else has an automatic. I know in Australia, at least, virtually all cars are automatic these days, but hopefully you're old enough to remember what it's like to drive a manual. I know when I was learning, it was really helpful to have a couple of guiding principles like always start in first gear or go down to second gear when you go around a corner. Now imagine I was asking other people, how did you go around that corner? Like, what gear were you in? And they say, gear? What do you mean by gear? Do you just slow down and go around? Forget about this concept of gears. You're getting yourself all confused. And for me, that's analogous to social situations. Have you ever received the advice, just be yourself? Unhelpful, right? Sometimes I have a serious question about how to manage a social situation, and the answer is just do whatever comes naturally. Well, I tried that and it didn't work. So I'm asking, what gear were you in when you went round that corner? Because I tried doing it, leaving it in first gear, and it didn't sound good. Something is obviously wrong. I'm obviously doing something wrong and I'm asking for your help. Can someone please help? Can someone please provide some guidance here? But if I'm the only one driving a manual transmission, other people have no idea how to understand or answer my question because for them, it just comes naturally. They don't even have to think about it. Okay, weird analogy number 4, being the only sighted person in a country where everyone is blind. This one comes directly out of a short story by H.G. Wells called Country of the Blind, where this sighted man, who can see just fine, accidentally ends up in this community where everyone is blind. And at first he thinks he has an advantage, but as he soon discovers it's not an advantage, in most situations in their society he had a significant disadvantage. In the eyes, okay, maybe not eyes, in the perception of everyone else, he's clumsy and uncoordinated. Why? Because they don't have lights in their houses. They do everything in the dark because why would they need light when they can't see? The fact that he can see is basically useless to their culture. So think of the superpowers that you have that are just not valued at all in culture. I have a superpower of deep thought, for example. I really like slowing down and focusing on one thing for a long time. With the rapid pace of life, that is, in general, not really that helpful. I also have a superpower in one-on-one relationships. In a similar way, I really like to slow down and pay attention and be present to one person at a time. But that also means I do not do well in big social gatherings. And it turns out most socializing is in big social gatherings. There's actually a weird twist in this Country of the Blind story, where the people somehow intuit that his difference has something to do with his eyes, and they plan to cure him by removing his eyes and making him blind. A little scary, but also kind of relatable. Analogy number 5 is being too flexible, almost like an octopus. I don't know if this one's going to make sense, but if you're too flexible, it can be very hard to be stable. So maybe octopus isn't the best example. In the past, I've also used the distinction between a tenon saw and a coping saw that I learned in Year 7 woodwork. One is for cutting straight lines and one is for cutting curvy lines. Have you ever tried to draw a straight line by hand? It's really difficult. If you want to draw a straight line, you use a ruler and then put the pen against the ruler, and then it's easy to draw a straight line. Okay, I'm mixing way too many metaphors here. The point is that often the reason we need structure is because we are too flexible. This was a problem for me a lot when I was younger. People would ask me a question at school, for example, and from their point of view, it's a very simple question with a very simple answer. The problem was I was quite intelligent and quite open-minded and could think out of the box very easily, which meant I could come up with half a dozen different plausible answers to this very simple question. And so, not knowing which of the plausible answers to choose, I would say, I don't know, in which case they would respond, stop pretending to be stupid, this is an easy question, and then you can see the predicament that I'm in. Having strict rules to follow can save so much time and energy. For example, when driving, always stop at a red light, even if it's 4 a.m. and there's no traffic. Imagine the inverse of that. If every time I came to an intersection, I asked myself the question, is it a good idea to stop at the red light this time or not? That would waste a whole lot of resources and lead pretty quickly to executive function overload. So we end up following rules. I have to wear clothes in public. I have to respond when people greet me. I have to have lunch every day, even if I don't feel like it. And these rules, this structure, allows me to stay on track. One of my favorite examples of too much flexibility, I'll see if I can find the original video. It's me trying to learn how to snowboard and it just not working because I was taking the instructor's advice literally and didn't get what he was actually trying to say. Okay, 2 more to go. The next one's a bit more of a vibe than an analogy. Think big friendly giant or Quasimodo type vibes. It's trying to explain the experience of feeling like no one wants to get to know me because they've already judged me on the outside. Feeling different and feeling misunderstood is a core autistic experience. Almost everyone I speak to relates some version of that. So this is trying to capture there is some sense of a barrier that I can't control that is giving people the wrong impression about me in advance. I'm big and scary, or I'm socially undesirable for some reason. And because of that, no one wants to get to know me. I'm confident that if they did get to know me, it would be a different story, but there's this very strong preconceived perception that's getting in the way of that. Okay, finally, last one. Are you ready? The final autism analogy is of an elephant and a hummingbird. This is in relation to transition time and energy and focus. Some of us are elephants. We are big and strong and unstoppable. It takes a little bit of time to gain momentum, but once I get going, do not get in my way. Others are more like a hummingbird, being able to completely change direction in a split second, multiple times a second, changing at such a rapid speed that other people just get dizzy trying to keep up. I'm definitely on the elephant side of this. I'm curious to hear which one you relate to the most. I'm guessing that some of our ADHDers might relate more to the hummingbird, and each of these has its own strengths and challenges. If you're a hummingbird, then sticking to one task consistently for a period of time can be a big challenge, especially when your strength is coming up with new ideas and new directions. For me, as an elephant, there's a lot of activation energy needed to do anything. If I only have a day, well, what can I possibly get done in a day? I need a couple of days to build up the momentum so that I can start being productive. Eventually, once I get into the flow, then I'm unstoppable. But the same issue exists in trying to wind down. It can take me several days to fully stop what I'm doing. If I don't have a 4-day weekend, I don't have a weekend. It gets to Monday morning, I'm still halfway through trying to unwind, and it's time to go again. Anyway, I hope some of these are resonating with you. I did warn you they're not for everyone, so thanks for sticking around till the end. Let me know in the comments which ones you liked the most, or if there were some that were just too ridiculous to follow. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.